Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hey there, welcome back to the show, Into the Work, therapy for empaths and seekers. And today, you and I are going to have a conversation about having a calling and knowing when to take the leap and when to play it safe. Well, okay, so maybe it's not totally a conversation. You're just going to be listening, but I have you here in spirit because likely I've been you, and I've likely been exactly wherever you are in the spectrum of things, trying to figure it all out. So now, of course, there are different levels of being called. Sometimes it's like a gentle nudge. I don't know what's going on with you right now, but as you listen, I want you to consider what might be happening for you right now. Because sometimes it is that gentle nudge, and sometimes it's a kick in the pants, like a force of nature is running through you. Okay, starting this podcast was that for me. But before I started it, it did start as a gentle nudge, like it was patiently repeating itself over and over again as an idea and kind of poking at me. And then I would basically talk myself out of it over and over until one day I felt like I woke up. I was thinking about it. I don't know if I was dreaming about it, but I woke up thinking about it. I went downstairs, started writing things down, and I had this tidal wave come over me that this has to be done and I'm going to start it today. And it was like, there was no other option, literally. That day, I came up with the name for the show, the trailer for the show, and every action step was a deeper certainty into this thing is happening, whether it scared me or not. And you might not be able to recall it right now, but I am sure you have had a similar story. But man, do I wish I had listened in earlier and acted upon it earlier? Yeah. I do. It's a common feeling for me, though. I don't believe in regret. I think it's a total waste of energy. I don't spend much time on regret at all. But I do have the awareness that I live with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. And having this awareness, knowing this about myself, is game-changing. It really is, because I can get off of autopilot and do the work to kind of lift my foot off the brake, or really slam it down if I need to, but it helps me to be aware of my stuff so that I can show up for it, right? But many of us, it's really difficult to know when to wait for that quote unquote divine timing, when it's right. And when does this calling deserve your undivided attention? When is it time to slow down and act later? Or when is it time for us to really get your foot off the brake and move? And that's what we're going to address today. How do you know if this is the right time to take the leap, or if it's wiser for you to play it safe? So let's talk about how to recognize the call for something greater in your life. So let's just see if this is even happening to you right now. It's definitely happened to you at some point in your life. You just might not have labeled it as such, but you definitely at one point had a calling to get wherever you are now. But here are some of the signs, right? When it's a sign that you're being called for something greater, you tend to have persistent inner nudges, as I call them, or like a deep longing that doesn't go away, like an inspirational idea that keeps coming up, even though you've talked yourself out of it in the past. That would be me. But I want you to consider, is there anything going on for you right now or over the last 6 months or whatever that keeps coming up and nudging at you, right? Keeps kind of poking at you. Are you feeling uninspired? Are you feeling restless? Are you feeling out of alignment with your current life at all? See, for me, it wasn't that I felt like I was out of alignment with my current life, although that is a really good thing for you to pay attention to when you're looking at this being a call for something greater, because that does tend to precipitate like that big calling that comes later is that kind of restlessness or out of alignment. Like it's almost like everything is getting smaller and everything is needing you to make a change in order for you to be alive again and feel good again. I didn't feel that way because I love what I'm doing. I love the things I'm doing, but there have been lots of little changes that have occurred over time that are kind of pushing me into making new decisions about the business and new decisions about how I'm going about things in my life that are making it really obvious. So I want to be clear, you don't have to hate the life you're in. You can absolutely still be feeling like, oh, I'm loving parts of what I do. But there are aspects of it that are starting to squeeze in on me and make me feel like something needs to change. Repeated synchronicities, like pointing you in a new direction, you want to look out for that because that's not just something you read about. It is happening. There are synchronicities probably happening that you are missing every day. Also, other people can be mirroring back what you're feeling. It's kind of like a creepy thing sometimes when you're coming across friends, mentors, strangers who are like noticing your gifts and like they say things to you and it's like the thing that you think you should do. It's like people around you they don't know it unconsciously. They're unaware that they are poking at the same thing for you. And a mix of fear and excitement, right? And so I want you to think about when you sit with anything that's potentially asking you to expand, to take a new action, to put yourself out there, any type of thing that might be calling you, is there a bit of a nervous and thrilling energy to it? Because if it doesn't have a little bit of that thrilling energy, it is not the right goal. It's not the right next step because it really should excite you a bit. Okay. It isn't about being something, and we're going to move into this next. It's not about being something that you should or have to do. It is really something that is thrilling. When something is a calling, it is something that kind of gets you a little tweaked, but it really excites you. So we talked last week about fear versus intuition. And that plays a big role in trying to decipher, is this a calling and what's happening here? How to tell if your hesitation that you have going on is fear, or is it intuition guiding you to wait, right? Sometimes intuition is telling you this is really exciting, but the time is not right yet. Take a breath, hold, things are going to fall into alignment for you. So how to tell the difference between fear and intuition? And we talked about that last week, but I'm just going to highlight a couple things. Fear feels like constriction. It feels like overthinking. It feels like worst case scenarios, right? If your brain is firing off those things, like what if this happens and what if this happens and overthinking and those constricted feelings, then you can guarantee yourself that that is fear. Intuition feels calm. It feels like a calm knowing, or a gentle not yet, right? We're not there yet, but keep keep hanging in there, but you're not there yet. It feels like it just hits you quickly, and it's something that hits the body without an emotion necessarily. So also check in, and I want you to ask yourself, when you're looking at your hesitation, I want you to ask yourself, does the idea of leaping forward in this thing feel expansive, or does it feel draining? This is important because when we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, which a lot of us have, I would raise my hand if you could see it, a lot of internal pressure. And so some of us just have like an internal pressure cooker. And like if you're in the human design category, you're probably like a manifesting generator, right? Like you have an internal pressure to build, to make, or to create, or do something. And sometimes that can really tweak us. And so we start thinking we have to do these things. We get all these like big feelings. And does it feel expansive, or does it feel draining, can be a really important question for you. Because if it's draining, then your intuition might actually be telling you, just hold off. This isn't the right time. It might eventually pan out that you weren't supposed to do it at all, but it actually thinking about it and preparing for it in some way actually leads you exactly to where you need to go, right? We don't get to always walk a straight line. So I want you just to consider asking yourself, when you sit with it, does it feel expansive or draining? And now our fears can be draining while the idea feels expansive, right? So this is a trick that I actually called in many times, including during this podcast. And so I find it really important to separate my fears from my calling. So let me break this down. I'm asking you to sit with both separately. If you are like, I don't know if the hesitation I feel is because I'm supposed to take a beat, I'm supposed to slow down and listen to that, or if I'm supposed to recognize it as fear and just move forward. So I want you to practice sitting for 10 minutes with your fears. And some of you are like, that sounds terrible, Michelle. I don't want to do that. But I really want to acknowledge to you, I really want to emphasize here that your fears are not the enemy. They are important pieces of information. They are really trying to protect you. And it's your job to recognize what these things are trying to tell you. They might be trying to tell you that something isn't right for you, but they also might be trying to tell you that we're just kind of scared and, or afraid of you kind of getting too big and all these things happening. And so it's really important for you to sit with your fears and also take 10 minutes to sit with the calling. Now, when I sat with the fears, it was, how am I going to do this? How am I going to find time? My fears were all about how demanding it was going to be, and that I was going to end up resenting the podcast, that it was going to really, honestly, it was going to get out of my control. If you are somebody that's like, oh yeah, amen, I get it. I drive with one foot in the gas and one foot in the brake half the time too, then you have some investment in control. And that is a protective factor. It's something that you're doing in your life to protect yourself, right? You might be more of a freeze state person than a heavy action person. And so, I had to really sit with that I had all these fears that I would lose control of it. And it would take me somewhere I didn't like, and I would be unwell, and I would have no control. And I thought, oh my gosh, look at that. That is me going back to a very old place within myself where I don't have boundaries, where I don't have power to say, oh, I have to change something here. I have to take a left turn. I'm allowed to make changes. I'm allowed to do what's right for me and to set boundaries when I need to. And I had to remind myself of my power in that. And then immediately after, I really came to terms with, I'm in charge, right? The podcast isn't in charge of me. I'm in charge of the podcast. And so I recognized that when I sat with the calling, it was so expansive. I sat with the calling without the fears. And I had this really beautiful image that came up of that the podcast was represented as a tributary, a stream of water that was heading out to the ocean. And as it moved out, it became more and more expansive. And it was the guidance that I needed to know, that I needed to receive, that once set in motion, it will eventually feed the ocean, right? Oh, that rhymed. Once set in motion, it feeds the ocean. So it felt like once this thing takes off, it's heading in a direction to something really expansive. And it will open up and it will become something that's in flow. And it was just this beautiful message. And so that's what you can get when you take the time to pull it apart and say, let me sit with my fears and let me sit with the calling on its own, to recognize the two, separate them, and to really learn from both of them. So when to take the leap, I want to get into that. There are signs that it's time to go for it, right? And so we named a couple of them already, but I'm just going to say you've outgrown your current situation and staying feels more painful than leaving. You know who you are if this is happening to you. You're like, oh my God, that is what's happening, but it's so freaking scary to go. If you don't do this thing, what is it going to feel like to you, right? If you ignore the calling, and sometimes, you don't even know what the calling is, but you are aware that something is out there and you're supposed to move. Now, your feelings are a part of your GPS system, as I've said, your intuitive GPS system, and they are everything you need to help you know what to do. So they're important to pay attention to. So it's really important for you to recognize and sit with the discomfort of staying compared to the discomfort of leaving, and to really sit with that, have a conversation with that emotion. The discomfort with staying, what does it have to say to you? What is it asking of you? What does it need from you to feel better, right? Is there something you feel more grounded in doing, like fixing something in the current situation? Or is it so erosive to your well-being that the current situation, the emotion that you have about that is trying to tell you, you cannot do this anymore, right? So you have also some level of clarity on your next step many times. So even if you don't have a full plan, you usually have an idea. It's helpful anyways, right? So if you have a calling, that you're a sense of something that you're feeling, and you don't know what the next first step is, I want you to go get it. Knowing what your next steps will be helps to give you the information you need and the clarity you need and the emotional intuition that you need. If you don't know the next steps, you are going to feel a little too detached from it, a little too overwhelmed from it. It can feel a little too heady, a little too much of a big idea. But understanding what the next steps and the steps after that, right? What are the steps going to be is a way for you to really feel it out. Now, I want to know if you feel a sense of relief or excitement when imagining the new path. Again, so if you sit quietly and you look at staying or going, or if you look at, staying where you're at longer, does that feel like a little bit of relief for you to just hold tight for another minute, like you're not quite ready yet? Or does it feel a lot better when you imagine the next path, which is for you to take action and to put action in motion? And always look out for the undeniable signs from the universe, because I swear you're receiving them and you're probably ignoring them if you don't know that you're receiving them, because you are. Look out for the undeniable signs. They're everywhere. Some little things are telling you. Sometimes they're like ridiculously clear and sometimes they're not. But you trust that you will figure it out as you go is a really strong standpoint, right? So if you know what those next steps are and you feel that urge to go ahead and take a leap, then I want you to look for, if you have to manufacture it, that's great, fine. But I want you to look for inside you, there is a trust that you will figure it out as you go. There's a knowing, you know what? I don't know, but I kind of just trust. I know I'm just going to figure it out as I go. I'm going to be okay. It's going to make sense. Now, when to play it safe? This is important too, right? It's neither or is better than the other. It's really important for you to understand your own timing on things. So there are signs that waiting or easing up on it might be the right move. So one, I want you to notice, is your nervous system in overdrive and you're making decisions purely from a place of stress or desperation? This is really important. Intuition is never desperation. It is never stress. It is never cloaked in, oh my God, I have to, I don't know, this sense of like doom. It definitely can feel unsafe, but it definitely isn't about feeling desperate. Now, I do want to interject something here. If you identify with being wired ADD, and I know not everybody likes that term, very medical model, but it's most recognizable. So I'm going to say it, right? So if you noticed that you are wired ADD, you also may have a tendency to be impulsive. And you know this about yourself. And you may have these experiences of feeling called and jumping into action quickly, only to decide later that it's not really what you want or it really wasn't aligned for you. And this can totally burn you out, right? And bum you out, right? Because as the trust of this calling starts to wane, because you acted impulsively, you start to exert even more energy and efforting to try to keep it up, only to find once again that that you need to start over again because it wasn't right. And when this happens a lot, we can act on our impulses without really taking the time to know it's the right move for you. So you start to mistrust your ability to follow through on things. It's because you keep starting over or you feel like you keep quitting because you're really jumping into things before you're ready, right? And so you can start to have this belief that you don't have what it takes to create this expansive life that you seem to really want and desire. And so it's really important for you to work on your preparation skills and resources to make the transition kind of really sustainable. So you want to really look at knowing what the next steps are. You're going to have to look at sometimes oh man, when you look at that impulsive energy, it's like, can we bottle that and sell that? Because people would buy it because that impulsive energy is it feels like gold. It's like, yes, I'm going to do this. And it's like off to the races. And don't get me wrong, okay? Highly successful people, some of the most successful people are act first, think later. Honestly, people who are, billionaires, people who make a lot of money, who a lot of them are doing their passionate thing and they're out saving the world, whatever that is. A lot of people who are the most successful don't get caught up in overthinking. They tend to act, but I think they are really honed in on the skill of quick intuition, feeling out what is right quickly and moving forward and acting versus getting stuck in the preparation or getting stuck in holding back. But there is a difference between really having that hone-in state with your intuition and moving forward and having this impulsivity and getting lost in it and not really checking in truly, right? Really just moving forward in the energy. Now, that being said, also, I do believe that all those starts and stops that you did taught you a ton, and they're all part of your path. It's all part of your path. And you're going to learn a ton. So I don't believe in regret. I believe that everything is happening exactly how it needs to happen in some way. I think there's just various ways that we could go through that. So there are major life circumstances that maybe need your focus. And I want to say that out loud. Sometimes we feel like we really want something. We're feeling that calling. But there really are major life circumstances, health, finances, obligations, things that are going on in your life that some part of you really wants to ignore in order to move forward. And I sometimes will tell people, you have to sit with that, of course. But when those things are going on, ask yourself, why simultaneously do I really want you to check in. Why do I have this urgency or this urge to do something, this calling in the midst of this, right? How will it serve me? What is it that I want from this calling? And is this the right time to experience that while I am in the depths of whatever's going on life circumstances? Or am I supposed to listen to the timing of things and slow down? I would recommend if you have major life circumstances going on that are just like blowing up, you should slow down. Because sometimes in those higher moments, we can want to grasp for something that feels good, something that feels that it is, going to be a distraction from these difficult things that are happening. Or, sometimes we are looking for the reasons that aren't necessarily going to be in alignment in a couple months. Like it could be that if you have all this going on, that you find that, it was kind of impulsive and it was driven by the wrong things when you were saying yes to the calling and that you have all this stuff going on. But that being said, of course, sometimes through the worst of circumstances, it is the champions that rise and face their callings, even when everything is hard, and how they really create something beautiful in their lives was pushing, through on some way and following that calling, even though things were going on. So you have to decide what's right for you. But clearly, I want you to pay attention when the pull is there, but the timing intuitively feels off, right? It's not fear. It's not worry or overwhelm. The pull is there, but the timing intuitively feels off. You're paying attention to that. If it feels off, I want you to sit with that. What feels off about this? And I just want you to explore it so that you can get more information. Even if your intuition feels like the timing might be off and it's time to take a step back, or if you feel like you need to do a little preparation before you can move forward, I want you to think about what small steps can you take right now to move forward towards your goal. While you're kind of playing it safe or playing it smart, I want you to start doing the researching, the networking, the skills building, the mindset work, right? I want you to start getting your body, your mind, your field, your energy, getting it moving and getting it kind of thinking more about this, experiencing this more, breathing it in and out. And if you're ready, how can you make the leap in a way that feels both bold and secure? Kind of bridging the gap with strategy and faith, right? We can have faith, but we should have strategy. And that's something that the impulse reaction can happen problematic for people with ADD, is they can kind of leap into things without that strategy piece, without the structure in place. And so then when it starts to fizzle and we're exhausted and burnt out, then it causes a lot of problems. So I want you to just take your time to really think about, what's the strategy here? What do I need to learn? And I swear these things come up. This is like, they come up magically, right? When I decided that morning that I was going to do the podcast, no joke, I swear to God, I didn't even research it that much yet. And algorithms are what? I don't know. But all of a sudden, I found this free training on how to get the entire thing going. This really elaborate free training that was super helpful. And I literally just used that to get my podcast started. And it was so freaking easy. I mean, it was so great. And so things show up. You're not alone in this. Things show up. And so having strategy, having knowledge, getting a baseline, and the power of trusting your path is really important. And that I mean by that is when you're preparing for this leap and you're getting ready for it, I want you to practice trusting your path, because this is going to ease the fear-based stuff. That no matter what decision you make, you're fine. It's okay to take a left turn. Much like I tell my clients who are starting to date again, like, you're not looking to get married today. Do you like him today? Do you want to see him tomorrow? Simple questions, nothing more. Like, you don't need to think like, oh, am I going to like that in 10 years? Really, I want you to simplify it. Do I like it today? Do I want to see him tomorrow, right? You have the right to change your mind. And it is safe for you to trust the path, even if it's windy, even if it goes in different directions than what you thought when you started out. That's the permission that I needed to remind myself when I sat down, that I have the power to decide. You have the power to decide at any moment what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Now, I realize sometimes when we take leaps of faith and we put ourselves out there, there are things at stake. And so it feels like, Michelle, I don't have the power. But I want you to practice trusting yourself anyways, that you have the power to see further options, that you have the power to take left turns and right turns and to figure out, and that it's safe for you to trust your path. Your mantra might be, I trust myself to know when to leap, and I trust myself to know when to prepare. So I just ask you to reflect, what is calling you right now? What do you feel ready for? And if you're unsure, that's a great question to explore and just sit with in meditation. What do I feel ready for? I feel ready for this. I feel ready for that. I feel ready for this kind of expansion. I feel ready to have this happen. I feel ready to step into that. And you're kind of just exploring, what am I ready for? And then ask yourself if there are any ways that you have been desperately wanting to leap forward, but you have your damn foot on the brake, right? Is there any way you are canceling out the nudges you are receiving, ways that maybe you're talking yourself out of it? And if so, can you sit with your objections separately, hear them out, and ask what they need in order to feel better? I know that sounds strange if you're not used to this, but it's a wonderful exercise. I want you to just sit with your objections, hear them out, and say, okay, what do you need from me to feel better? Well, I would need it to be like this, and I would need it to be that. No, we can't have certainty. None of us get certainty. Nobody. But by sitting with them separately, you can ask to see or hear or feel how this will be in your life, what this would be like. But whatever happens, don't give up. You are meant to expand. You are meant to grow. And I am certain the world needs what you are here for. Every twist and turn will teach you lessons that will catapult you into the expansion and the growth that sets your soul on fire. I believe that. I believe in you, and you should too. Seriously. So keep dreaming, open yourself up to guidance, look for it, expect it, make time for it. And I really think you'll be able to start differentiating between when it's time for you to slow down and when it's time for you to speed up. And really allow yourself to sit with both sides of the topic and figure it out. Okay, I hope you have a magical week ahead, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers. Until next time.